TGI Friday, everybody. It's June 12th. Thomas Miller on the Fun Astrology Podcast. Thanks for stopping in and sharing some of your day with me. Let's talk about the astrology of what's going on today. Yesterday, I promised that we would talk about something that hasn't gotten the billing that it should. Today, we will do that. And that is going to be the little asteroid belt planet Eris. Have you ever heard of it? Eris. It's the sister of Mars in mythology. But we'll get to that in a second. I did want to talk about what's overhead today. Nothing has really changed. The moon is still in Pisces. It stays there until tomorrow at 5:02 p.m. So will tomorrow, Saturday, be a void of course day? Of course. 8:44 a.m. to 5:02 p.m. And like always, these times are Eastern U.S. times. The other big conjunction tomorrow to put on your note list is Mars will be conjuncting Neptune at 10:13 in the morning. We've been talking about that whole theme this week, really, of the Sun, first of all, squaring Neptune and Mars, and then now Mars conjuncting Neptune, something that Moi knows a little bit about, because in my chart I have the big infamous Marsentune, Sun, Mars, Neptune, all together at the whopping, wonderful degree of 6 in Scorpio, 666. There you go. So you can count that as, again, amplified intuition or really screwed up thinking, whichever one you want. Or you might get spiritually mad at somebody this weekend. But there is a good thing, and that is today we've got a trine between the moon and Mercury, both in water signs. Mercury is down in Cancer, and the moon is in Pisces. So if you have something loving to say to somebody, especially somebody domestic in your world, this would be a very seasoned day to do that. Because it's the moon and Mercury, they're fast-moving, but the moon will certainly move off of that aspect after today, so that's a today thing. So that fixes you up through the weekend, except for what I wanted to talk about. And this is what I got to looking under the skin of this and thought, wow, this should be uncovered and unpacked. Because on Sunday, Pluto squares the asteroid belt planet Eris. That will be at 10:49 a.m. Just a couple of things about Eris quickly. It is just now beginning to get its astrological legs. It is 3 times farther away, 3 times farther out than Pluto, and it takes 549 or 69 years to make it all the way around the astrological circle, to do a complete rotation. In contrast, Pluto takes 248 years. In mythology, Eris, in Greek mythology, was the sister of Mars. In Roman mythology, Eris was called Discordia. That's the key word to lock onto. Discord, strife, conflict. Now, every sign, that's kind of the main interpretation, but every planet, every sign, everything in astrology has an opposite. So what would be the opposite of that? Harmony would be one thing that comes to mind, right? Fluidity, bringing people or circumstances together. And one thing I've seen as an interpretation is basically helping the oppressed. Having a heart for the down and out, in other words. Now, I will tell you that every one of you listening to this, every one of you has something in common. Every one of us has Eris in Aries. It has been there since 1924. And even though it is at 24, almost 25 degrees Aries now, it will not see the light of Taurus until 2044. It's another 24 years before Aries closes and moves those 6 degrees. Now, I'm going to turn to an article that Steve Forrest wrote on his blog to give you more information about Pluto and Eris and this whole thing. And then there's a reference to another article where he elaborated on Eris more. So if you want to do a deep dive, the article that I'll put in the show notes will take you to the second or most recent one that deals with the coronavirus. And then there's a reference in there to a previous one that you can do some additional work. So he correlated this to the effect and actually says that he thought that this relationship between Eris being in the picture of Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter is what also was responsible for the coronavirus triggering like it did. And I'll tell you, this Eris stuff is really interesting. I first came across it through a software program that I bought when I really started to get serious about this a couple of years ago. And there's an Eris interpretive mode to that software. And I looked at it in my own chart and I thought, wow, that's pretty accurate. Whoa. And then it just like Steve Forrest said, it kind of just got off the radar and didn't hold its place. I think I'm going to bring this back in because it is a place to look that even in my own chart, it shows a lot of the challenges that I had with my mother. And it's very clear. And some other areas where challenges have been a recurrent theme in my life. So it's almost like the Chiron type of wounded healer thing, but it's where areas are going to show up with discord. So everybody has it in Eris, depending on the time of your birth, is what house it will appear in your natal chart, of course. But here's what I wanted to focus on. So Sunday is one of three this year. We've got these three themes going on. We've got the Saturn-Uranus threes triad that happens next year. And by the way, a lot of this stuff, now not Eris, I didn't mention this in the video, but the video that I created last week is in soulfoodtalks.com, and it is a comprehensive 51-minute overview of all the things going on astrologically the rest of this year, next year, and then we look into Pluto moving into Aquarius, which I'm starting to get some second thoughts on that, too, as I've been doing some more study on that. Maybe we'll talk about that as that gets more elaborated and fixed in my mind. I just want to sit with it for a while. But it comes from that perspective that Pluto does bring the shadow out of whatever sign it is in. So Sunday, Pluto and Eris square. Then Thursday, we have a trigger going back to an eclipse that we had back in July of 2019. And the key number here is 24 degrees because, now think about this, Sunday, exact degree and minute Pluto Eris, and then on Thursday we have an exact degree and minute Pluto Mars. Now that's going to be a sextile, but also it's at 24 degrees, so it'll be 24 degrees 21 minutes. Now we'll talk about this next week, but it will happen at 6:47 p.m. Thursday. Now Eris will not be at exactly the same minute, but it certainly is the same degree. So you're going to have Pluto, Mars, and Eris all at 24 degrees. So by any kind of conventional cookbook astrology interpretation, you could say, are the women and children safe? I don't know. We'll see. Let's just see. Let's put it out there. This goes back to me like when I was looking at the chart and saw Saturn move to 29 degrees Capricorn and wondered wonder what that will be like. And let's just watch and observe. And what it was like is that was the very time that the coronavirus started to explode around the world. So this is another one of those, let's just tuck this under the brim of our hat and observe what this has in store. Now, there's one thing that could affect this, and that is that Pluto is in retrograde. And that could have a big diminishing effect. Now, as we look on out, June 19th is when the moon wobble peaks. That's when the sun will conjunct the North Node in Gemini. Now remember, 3 weeks back is exactly the day that the moon wobble began is the same day the riots began. That's pretty typical of a moon wobble period. You'll have one kind of big major thing that you could point to during the basically month that it's in effect. Usually it happens in those first 3 weeks leading up to the peak. So that happens on June 19th. That will be next Friday a week. And then, of course, Sunday, the 21st, is the annular solar eclipse in Cancer. That will peak at 3:40 a.m. Eastern Time. So unless you decide to stay up overnight, that one will basically be while most of us in the U.S. are sleeping. And like I said, this is going back and re-triggering the July 16th, 2019 eclipse, which happened the sun was in Cancer and the moon was in Capricorn, but at 24 degrees. So we've got our eye on this whole 24-degree thing, this whole coming next week, all the way through following Sunday. So we'll be with it, and we will see you here. Hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for listening to all of this rambling on, but I thought this was kind of interesting. It's something that we haven't talked about. Have a good one. Take care. Stay safe.